Welcome to the Pizzazz Filmmaker interview series. At Pizzazz, we've made it our mission to help film and video makers succeed. In this series, we'll be speaking to interesting people from across the film industry. We'll gain insight into their journeys to help share their lessons with our audience.
Today's guest is horror filmmaker and director Dean Midas. In 2014, Dean produced and acted in his first short film. After that film was incredibly well received, since then Dean has gone on to make more horror shorts that have been featured at festivals and in media around the world. He has won several awards for his work, including most recently Darkus magazine's Northeast Film Director of the Year and BBC Upload's Film Master for 2023. In 2023, his latest short, The Devil's Stone, won the audience vote at the Liftoff Season Awards held at Pinewood Studios. Please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Dean Midas. Dean, welcome to the Pizzazz video interview series, and thanks very much for offering to spend the time with us today. I'm really excited to talk to you. I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation, so welcome.
Thank you very much for asking me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So for those people watching who maybe aren't familiar with you or familiar with your work, would you mind just giving us a very quick introduction to who you are and what it is that you do, please?
Yeah, so my name's Dean Midas. I'm a film director and writer of short horror films. I've got three characters that I'm working with in a minute: Valentine, the Rag Dolly, and a new one called Saya Hicks.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I must say I haven't heard of the last one, the most recent one, but I've looked at your website and I've watched some of your previous films. And I wanted to say before we get into the detail that I really enjoyed them. I think you've got a real knack for scaring people and for for sort of producing images and video that's unsettling. So it's obviously something that you've got a real skill for. Were you influenced at a young age by scary films or the horror genre? How did you come to work with film?
Massively. I think if you watch my films, there's some very big influences there straight off. John Carpenter is a very big influence of my work, and if you watch it, you can see there's a lot of the same similar sort of shots that John uses. And the Scream franchise, as I got a bit older, was huge. It rejuvenated the horror genre. It did. But I think Halloween, I was very young. I probably watched it when I shouldn't. I had older brother syndrome. I had an older brother that was watching things that maybe I shouldn't have been watching. And I remember seeing it for the first time and actually being a bit like, what's happening? This man can't be stopped. But actually at the same time enjoying it. And then obviously as Nightmare on Elm Street came out, Freddy Krueger. So they're the ones that really influenced me and got me to do what I'm doing now.
I think the thing about horror is that there's a contrast there, isn't there? There's almost this dichotomy between the pleasure of watching a film and, being told a story and being taken on a journey, but also you're afraid of what's going to come next. You want to be placed as the viewer, you want to be put in an uncomfortable situation or see something shocking, don't you?
It is. It's you put yourselves in the position of these people at these parties or at these, wherever they are, because you think we all know there is a killer there, and we all know it's also going to come out, So, but you just imagine yourself in that situation, thinking how terrified would you actually be, and then portraying that back through my camera helps me give a lot of influence to sort of to show people what would it really be like in that situation.
Mm. Speaking of your camera, one other thing that I was really impressed by when I was researching you is the fact that you seem to have mastered the art of producing films on a very small budget. And I think I read in one of your interviews that maybe it was the latest film with the Valentine camera. It might have been produced for a budget of something like £50.
Yeah, it is. We're very upfront. It's and also 99.9% of my films are filmed on a mobile phone as well. So we use plug-in microphones on a mobile phone with hand rigs and additional lighting. But yeah, so I've called in a lot of actors. I know a lot of people, and obviously as it's got bigger and bigger, and we do generate a lot of press in the Northeast. We get a lot of people come to us. Maybe up-and-coming actors that maybe just want to get some experience on their CV, or just people like me, like you say, that love the horror genre and just think, you know what? I even had someone just say, I want to just be in the Valentine film because I want to meet Valentine. And I'm like, that's absolutely fantastic. And then sort of saying to them, but you do realise that she's not real, don't you? And it's like just that genre. We get a lot of emails from people wanting to be involved, and that is very, very beneficial for us.
That must be very gratifying as well to have produced a character and to sort of breathe life into this character that now has, well, basically acquired, in the nicest possible way, cult status. Like you have people that you don't know reaching out to you to sort of reference this character and say that they want to be seen in a story with this character. That must be very gratifying.
Yeah, it's a massive honor. I didn't think years ago this would ever happen. You make the films and want them to be as big as you possibly can. That's why we all make films. But yeah, and then obviously we film at a place called the Manor House Hotel in West Auckland, which we call West Manor. And I get people randomly send me private messages on any social media going, I'm at West Manor, and they'll be down one of the dark corridors. I hope he isn't here, and taking a selfie. And again, that's great because it just shows how the characters just has come to life.
Yeah, which must be really exciting. It's funny you mentioned the reasons why people make films, and I think that's an interesting statement to make because I mean, tell me what you think. Like, when you set out to make a film, I'm guessing that maybe your motivation isn't, I want it to be as big as possible or as popular as possible, although I'm sure that's part of it. Do you feel there's other motivations there for doing what you do? And, would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, so basically I always get a storyboard in my head. I automatically know from film to film what I want to happen. Sometimes on the budget that I work with, some things that was in my mind are just not possible financially because it's too big, and you just think, we can't actually really do that. But to see the storyboard of things that are going in my head, to see it then us pulling it together over these 3 or 4 months, which is how long they take, to then seeing it go onto these channels, it's just really gratifying and just an absolute honor because I'm not just me, but I'm working with some amazing actresses. I'm working with some amazing sort of technicians, prop people. And it's just to see all this hard work that we've put together over that time, to then see it, that other people are then watching it and feeding it back to us. That is more rewarding than it being hitting millions, because actually people are coming to us personally and go, I watched your film last night, from America. We found, and I thought it was brilliant, and then getting people when months go on say, when are you making another one? And it's like, well, give us time. So that's good. If the messages weren't coming in, and we weren't getting any interaction, then we might all think, what are we doing? But it makes it just so rewarding just to get the interaction from people to say that they're enjoying them and they're watching them.
Yeah, it sounds pretty satisfying. When did you first get started and how? Because if I've read it correctly, I believe that you are someone that works a full-time job, and then in addition to that, you also create these films. Is that right? So you're working to support yourself and also then filmmaking too. Is that right?
Yes. So at the moment, I am part-time head of marketing at a golf club, which there's worse places to be, in Brunspith. And then this is what else I do the other part of the time, apart from looking after my two girls. I've got 2 young daughters. So
how old are they, if you don't mind me asking? Just because I've got a 6-year-old son, so
14 and 9. So
okay, right.
the 14-year-old's going on 20. But
keep you on your toes. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I've got it's a fine line as well between what I do, because we do get a lot of recognition, and keeping my doors under wraps from it, because it is a horror genre and it is scary masks. It is scary. So the masks in my house are literally sanitized. So look, there's Eve, so they're not scared of them. They're just, there's Eve, and it's just like they're not bothered. Where some of the masks, if you see like Freddy's, or Jason, they might go whoa. But if it's there constantly, they just go, they're used to it. They're not bothered anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just making sure I keep doing what I'm doing. But yeah, while also bringing, because we've all got bills and a mortgage to pay, so I've got to make sure that I also bring the money in.
Did it start out with you having a full-time job and then, deciding that you were going to do this and then sort of carving out space for it as well, or has it always been a big part of your life since sort of school or college days?
It's been a big part since probably early 2010 onwards, when I had the idea of the Chained Oak, Legend of the Chained Oak, which was my first film.
Yeah.
And And then I've just clearly said that that went crazy in 2014 for us.
Yeah.
I never ever expected in my first ever film to be winning Best Horror at the Portobello Film Festival. I mean,
Yeah.
even saying now it still doesn't seem quite real that I'm saying it, but to do that, and then you get the plaudits and the pats on the back and go, right, this guy's the next big thing and all this, and then like I say, I've said, I need to pay. I've got bills to pay. I've got a mortgage, and as we know, the film industry at the lower level, the finance isn't there for low budget filmmakers. You have to go looking for it yourself, or you have to, you have to crowdfund it or whatever, or have some good friends that are willing to invest in you. So yeah, and unfortunately, then from then on for about another 5 years, I had to go back to the real world and earn a living, obviously to pay bills and stuff.
What was it that initially, before you had the idea for the Chained Oak, what was that genesis like of going from, just sort of working full time and just living, I'm gonna use quote marks, a normal life, unquote, and then having an idea? What spurred you to really start to work on it, and what did those first few months or few years of working on it look like? How did you manage that with your other priorities?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and that was a real whirlwind back in 2014 when this all happened. I do remember the first time I stood in Alton Towers at the Hex Ride and listened to the story and thought, what a great fit. This would make a great little film if we could turn this into a film. And that went on probably for a few years in my head, thinking, and at one point I even said to someone, it's I just don't know how I'm going to get this made. And then you get in contact with people. Again, I had a writer called Dan Weatherer who saw it and said, look, I live in Staffordshire. I'm intrigued about this idea you've got for the film. Would you give me the honour of letting me show you some ideas I've got? And of course, I said, oh, absolutely. And I think within 6 months, we were stopping in a B&B in Alton, filming it.
Wow.
So, yeah. And again, it was an amazing experience with some amazing crew who've gone on to some quite big things, some of them. And it's just that away from filming stuff that you all know about. It's not just that the filming, it's the interactions and all these amazing personalities that you've come together with that have got these ideas and these skills that in a normal life you'd never encounter them. And you come together to create what we call is a little bit of magic. Well, hopefully it's a little bit of magic. And then these people become lifelong friends, and I think that's what it's all about.
Some people have said that life on a film shoot, it's a bit like where the sum becomes greater than the sum of its parts. You put these people together in these situations, and it's almost like this alchemy happens where what comes out of it is greater than any one person could do alone, but also, just it's that special combination of people and place and all having the same motivation. It sounds pretty special.
Yeah, it is. And initially you do get, because as you know yourself, the film industry, there can be some very big personalities that have all got their own the side of the story that they want to put forward. So, once you get down the path of what everyone's done, which is, everyone introducing themselves and, I've done this and I've done that. And then you actually get, and by the end of it, you get this very rewarding experience that you've had, again, with people that you become lifelong friends. And maybe at the start of the week, you're probably looking at each other thinking, this isn't going to work. And then by the end of it, you're sharing it, at the wrap party, you're sharing a beer with each other and, and cheers at everyone. So it is. It's an amazing experience. And I think it is just a big part of it. It's not just releasing them and putting them out there. It's the behind the scenes stuff is just as important.
If there was someone out there now who, let's say, is trying to make their first film, whether it's a short or a trailer or anything else, and they're about to organise their first shooting days, what advice would you give them that maybe you could have used, back in the early days, that you think maybe isn't very well known or isn't spoken enough?
I would say enjoy it, because it's as I've gone on there, it's an amazing experience if you allow it to be an amazing experience. Don't make it become stressful. Don't make a film ever, unless you've got a gazillion-pound budget and you've got producers on your back saying this has got to be a success, don't ever be pressured into enjoy the filmmaking, enjoying the experience, enjoying being part of all these people that you're working with. And if something happens with the film and it does well, then fantastic, it's a massive bonus. But just enjoy the filmmaking process first.
Enjoy it for the process rather than the outcome.
Yeah. The rewards, because none of us can guarantee. You see multi-million-pound films sometimes flop, and that's just if it doesn't capture people's imaginations. And then we see some of these short films, that then become massive, and some of them you go on now and you can see some of the short horror films have got well over 1 million views, and you think, wow. Yeah. So it captures people's imagination, but not all of us we're not all gonna hit that, unfortunately. So you've just got to take the big highs when they come and enjoy them. That's what I would say. But don't go into it thinking, I've got to make a film that's going to be watched by a gazillion people, and I've got to win awards, and I've got to win this. Because if you do that, you just will you'll just not enjoy the process.
It's amazing the degree to which that is a theme that you hear from other people in different walks of life. Like I've listened to an interview with Rick Rubin, the record producer, who said pretty much exactly the same thing, that, it's more important to enjoy the music writing process and to make a good record than it is to worry about how many units does it sell after you publish it. David Lynch, the filmmaker director, he said pretty much exactly the same thing, that the best way to produce a good film is to make sure everyone's having fun on set and is, treating each other nicely and is having a good time, and there's no stress or pressure. So it's interesting to me that same theme emerges in completely different industries. It's how, it must be it's clearly a wise bit of advice, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just like you say, you've just got to do it because, as I said, I don't want to repeat, but if you go into it thinking, I'm making this film to win awards, don't do it, because you won't enjoy being part of this magical industry. Like you say, enjoy being around people, enjoy the filming, enjoy things when they go wrong. Don't be too stressed or irate with people if their acting's not maybe up to, at the end of the day, these are low budget films. You're not going to have an Oscar. Well, you might be lucky, but unless you're very lucky, you're not going to have an Oscar winning performance in your £500 short film.
Yeah.
So just enjoy being part of like-minded, or being part with like-minded people.
Yeah. Now that you have achieved some success with your films, and you're being recognised on a bigger scale, how do you manage that today between your creative projects and working part-time and maintaining a family as well? Has that changed over the years, and how do you do that at the moment?
It's changed recently, I would say, because I've had a lot of exposure recently, from probably October onwards, even more so, and the process of, look, I'm not famous, but I do in my local area get recognised. I do get people coming up to me going, are you the film guy? And I'm like, yes, I am. And I tell you what, the question it is nice that I get asked a lot is, like, when are you making another film? Or they'll say, oh, I just watched The Devil's Stone, and oh, it was a great film. We really enjoyed it. We streamed it onto the TV. And it's like, oh, thank you very much. My eldest isn't so keen as much when that happens, because she's too cool for that. It's, oh, this is embarrassing, Dad. It's so you get a very, very tiny insight into what it must be like for these, your Spielbergs and your John Carpenters when they're in their daily life, what it must be like. And they've had like blockbuster films, so you can imagine them going to their local supermarket and just getting swamped by people going, oh, John, come in. So yeah, but it is nice. And like I said, it's a nice recognition for the team as well. It's not just for me, it's for the team.
And how do you, in terms of time, does that prove difficult, having to manage the time you spend on your films versus the time you spend, on your job, on, sort of helping to run a household? Is there any advice you'd give, an aspiring filmmaker who's maybe just starting out on this process on how to do that well, or if there's something that you've learned from the last few decades?
Planning, you've got to be on. I mean, obviously, with running a job, as you said, family and making a film, it's planning. You've got to be very meticulous with your shoots, making sure that I'm not, I've not got a 4-hour shoot planned in the treehouse and literally the same night. Oh, you're meant to be taking the girls to go and play tennis. So it's just it's a juggling act. But I'm very lucky. My wife is very supportive, and obviously she knows. Obviously, she sees all the attention the press we're getting. So she is very supportive. Although a lot of my friends do really like the fact that she doesn't like horror films, which they find quite funny. So unless I get some friends, I am unfortunately one of them very sad people that you see sat at the back of the cinema on their own for some of the horror films because she won't go and watch them. So unless my friends are free or available, I have to sometimes visit some of these films on my own.
Don't worry. I think I know how you feel because I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm a musician, and a lot of the genres that I play, my wife is not a fan of at all. So if I have to learn songs when I'm listening to the stereo at home or in the car, she'll walk out of the room for half of the stuff that I have to play. So I get where you're coming from a little bit. I think
it's a juggling act.
It is, but I think in any partnership, I think it's nice when you have your own interests, and I also think it's nice when you have different tastes, because I think this is my personal opinion anyway. I think that you can be, so someone can be your life partner and be your soulmate, and you can be very, very different in surface level things like the types of films that you like or the types of music you listen to, but also you can be very compatible and very alike in deeper ways, like your values or your temperament, or some of these. So I think it's good to have a partner that doesn't exactly like the same things all the time, And
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, because we'd only be arguing what's the best horror film ever.
You still be arguing, just in agreement, not in opposition. I like that.
Yeah, I'd probably be agreeing with it, just to save an argument. But I agree. It does that. We've got all these different things we like in areas of life that, like you say, then we can then come back at the end of filming or whatever she's doing, and then talk about family stuff and stuff, like you say, our values within the house.
Yeah. So we talked a bit earlier about the filmmakers that influenced you when you were quite little, quite at a formative age. Are there filmmakers that you enjoy today that maybe you didn't like when you were younger, or maybe they've just come through recently, so they're newer? And I'm just interested who, and if so, what it is that you admire about them particularly.
I mean, I would, like I said, John Carpenter was a big, is a big influence. Wes Craven, God rest his soul, was a massive influence on me. His signed screen masks proudly in my cinema room. My friend got it signed for me.
Wow.
It actually personally signed the forehead before sadly Wes passed away.
Yeah.
And that sits proudly in one of my rooms. And I always often have a look at it and talk to it when I've got a new film coming out.
To give you motivation and give you the force for the new project. Yeah.
It is, because these guys, they are and Wes was a massive influence on my career and still is. I know he's not with us anymore, but even the screen films like Ghostface was a massive, the 90s, the horror genre. I know it's said a lot, but it was gone. There was nothing coming out. That we were all waiting for the next thing, and then this magical film came out with this mask that blew everyone away when it first came out, and the storyline, and I just remember all these other little spin-offs, like I know he did last summer, and Urban Legend, and all these ones came out. But it did relaunch it, and obviously Ghostface is still going now. So he's still doing very well
as a brand.
Just going back, as a brand,
it's known around the world by every generation, isn't it?
It's absolutely huge, and I think, like you say, it's up there with your Michael Myers and your Freddy Krueger in terms of you only have to see the image, and everyone around the world will go, "That's Ghostface."
But I love with those films as well. What I loved and why I think they were so successful is they didn't just try to emulate the horror films that had come before them, although I think they did that quite faithfully. They injected a little bit of satire and a little bit of self-referentialness, didn't they, into the genre too? And I think that's why I sometimes think that's why it persists as much as it does, because it was faithful to the genre, but it was also clever, and it wasn't afraid to sort of tip a wink to the audience every now and again who'd grown up with those films.
it's the first time we've ever sat there and gone, why do these kids never talk about like other horror films? You know, I know the film world's not real, so to speak, but it's like no one ever talks about other horror films. Where that was the first film that went, you know, and the killer's like, who was the killer in Fridays? And it's like,
why do they always say we should split up when they're in this haunted house? You know.
And this killer, this serial killer is just literally coming out at exactly what we've all been thinking for years.
Yeah.
And planted it in this magical film, like you say. One minute you can be scared, thinking where is he? The next minute you're laughing because, like you say, they brought a lot of humor into it as well. So, you know, it was clever, it was magical, and I think it was of its time. I mean, my one wish is that I hope in 20, 30 years they don't try to do it like they have done with a lot of the Halloweens and stuff, where they've tried remaking them like the original ones, because I think a film like that, it's one of a kind and of its time. I think so too. It shouldn't be remade.
And sorry, I think you were about to reference another filmmaker before I sort of kept on speaking about the Scream films. Were you going to say someone else whose work you recognised, maybe, or who?
No, I must admit, I like the Blumhouse guys, because I mean they've just done the recent Scream films, in fairness, and I think they're bringing a big influence. I did like the New York Scream. I thought they did a very good job taking it out of Woodsboro, which was good. I'm glad personally. I know a lot of the Scream might get in trouble for this, but I'm glad that Nev's coming back. In the next one, and you know, Kevin Williamson, who's directing this now, you know, what an amazing writer, and he's now going to be given an opportunity. Obviously, the person that actually invented, you know, we all think of Wes as the person who invented Gopher, but it was Kevin Williamson that wrote the script and stuff. And obviously now Kevin's going to be directing the new film, so it'll be interesting what happens with Kevin's views on it and his outlooks.
I think Blumhouse have a quite good pedigree of horror and, you know, sort of psychological films. If anyone's looking to do some research into the genre, but also to find out what maybe recent films have sort of added to the canon, I think Blumhouse is a good place to start, isn't it, really?
They make some really, really good films. I tell you what I've really liked recently, films that I didn't think I would enjoy. Obviously, we're just away from different, but that I really did enjoy, like Megan. I didn't think I'd enjoy Megan, but actually it works as if it's a very good horror film, to be honest with you, because we all imagine, again, with this AI world that we're living in now, that you know, this could, it could happen. One of these things in the future might start thinking, I've got a mind of my own. Actually, don't start telling me what to do. So I did really enjoy that film.
I'm going to seize on what you just said, because I can't resist asking, you know, sort of what does make a good horror film in your opinion? What do you think of the critical ingredients?
I don't like the overhype of a film. I was talking to a guy the other day again. I was actually on the school run, and he's fully aware of what I do, and he always comes and says, "Have you seen The First Omen?" or "Have you seen this?" He always talks to me about horror films. I think it's just the overhype. I don't like it when we get this campaign where it says, "This is the scariest film of all time," and then you sit and watch it in 90 minutes, you think,
it's not.
I've seen some of my kids' cartoons are scarier than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think the tents, that's why, like, things like the Friday the 13th, you've got this, you know, you're building up this dark areas, you know, paths or corridors or doorways. We all know the killer's there somewhere, but just building that tension up so much that when it does come, you know, it scares you out of your seat, even though you know they're there. But yeah, just building up that tension and making it more. I'm not a massive fan of the gruesome horrors, if I'm honest. I'm not a massive fan of the Hostels and stuff like that. Not saying they're not good films. I'm not, before anyone complains, but I'm probably more into like a story slasher style horror than the sort of gruesome ones.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. Thank you. Now, because you've worked in social media and marketing for a while, did you work for Newcastle Football Club? before you worked for the golf club as you currently do? Was it Newcastle Women's team?
I worked for Newcastle United Women for a few years, and also worked for Sunderland Women in the Women's Premier League.
Because you've worked in marketing and social media, it sounds like that must be, kind of your forte. So how does that, do you think that helps you when it comes to promoting your films? And is there something in particular that you'd suggest people use more or less when they're trying to promote their films and to put their name out there? Have you got any advice for people on how to do that?
It's a massive, it's a massive advantage for me having a marketing background when I'm trying to launch my films, because I'm used to writing press releases. I'm used to writing and getting stuff out online that maybe will interest people to say, I've never heard of this guy, but I want to know more.
Right.
And it is a powerful tool. It doesn't guarantee me press coverage, but it does help that obviously a lot of the press that I am with or get featured in, they are obviously aware with me from other jobs. So, it does help. I'm not going to say that they guarantee me coverage, because they don't, but it does help when I say, I've got my new film coming out. It does help me, get some press attention.
So it sounds like if I was starting out and I'd created my first short or my first film, then the way to do it is to embrace this stuff, is not to sort of shy away from it or to, ignore it, even if it's out of my comfort zone and maybe I haven't used it before. It sounds like the best thing to do is just to dive in and to try and, sort of immerse oneself in it and get to grips with it. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that, because, and if I try and find a niche as well, like you say, my big niche is that obviously all my films are made on very low budgets and on a mobile phone. So again, the press are really interested in, they're watching my films and I've had one or two of them actually say off the camera, so they'll stop the interview and they'll go, right, Dean, we're not recording now, etc., etc. What do you really use? And I'll say, I use my mobile phone. I'm not lying to you. I haven't backstage got a massive DSLR or I'm not going around really with a rig pretending. I said, it's all on my mobile phone. Most films now are in full HD or 4K coverage in filming. The lighting on them is amazing now, and obviously I've got a rig which has got lighting on it, a mobile phone rig which has got lighting, which does help. That's probably the only disadvantage with mobile phone filming is lighting. If you're in a badly lit area, you can sometimes get the flicker of the phone's trying to find it.
Can you get cheap equipment that could maybe supplement the phone in terms of like a lighting rig or something like that to compensate for that?
Yeah, I mean, I will be honest. The plan at some point is I'm really enjoying where I am at the minute and enjoying just keeping it all going along and spreading the word of what we're doing. Yeah. At some point, I do want to make a feature, whether it's one of my current characters or a new one. But I do want to, and obviously I appreciate at that point then the equipment will have to raise a level, and we may have to bring some crews in and additional help, whether it's lighting or camera crews to help to make that happen. But yeah, at some point I would love to do that. But at the minute, we are happy just keeping these characters, building and keeping the interest going.
Is there another story or another sequel that's in the works at the moment that you're able to talk about, or that you'd like to use this interview to promote, perhaps maybe sort of generate some interest for it?
Yeah, so we've got it's actually going to be called Valentine, the next film. It's due out a week on Friday.
Fantastic.
Just across it literally is, there's going to be some flashbacks to young Eve, which we've never done before, so I had to get some young actors in to do that. And obviously that again is another little process, a completely different area that obviously with parents and guardians on site at all times, running through the script with them, just to say, because at the end of the day it is a horror film.
It's a horror film, with some unsuitable content.
Yeah, and the scene, it's quite a powerful scene. Obviously I can't give anything away. It is a powerful scene at the start of the film, but it does involve two 10-year-old girls, and the parents were there at all times. Obviously, they had the scripts before, and at every avenue during the filming, I just kept stopping and saying to the parents, "Are you happy with what's happening?" Are you happy? Do you want to continue? And just to make sure that everyone's, because once it goes out, it's out there then. And, we are
it's out there
quite
forever.
some good hits at the moment. And obviously the festivals feature our films quite a lot now as well. So we've just got to make sure that when they go out, that these two young girls and their parents are happy with what they're seeing.
But as a director, as a filmmaker, that's another, string to your bow then, I suppose, isn't it? It's the fact that you can look back on the project and say that not only have you directed and, sort of brought the whole thing together, but that now includes you can work with children, whilst maintaining a completely safe and professional environment for them, even when it's, sort of not universally suitable content. So it's more experience. It's another aspect of filmmaking that you've now got practical experience of. So it sounds like it's not only a new challenge, but also it'll stand you in good stead for the future, I imagine, for other projects, working with other people.
It's not something I've encountered before, because normally we do, keep it at 16 and over, to be honest with you. But to pull off this image of a young Eve, we had to bring in these young actors in. So it was quite some of the conversations were difficult, and then obviously sitting down with the parents and going through the scripts. I didn't go through the scripts while the kids were there the first time. It was just the parents, and I said, right, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I had to go on the set. I had one of the, I won't say because it's not of it, but one of the actresses was just looking around constantly while we were in the Manor House Hotel, and I went, I can 100% promise you right now, Eve Valentine is not going to pop out from one of these doors. She is not here.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
How do you put someone at ease when they're a child and they're in an unfamiliar setting? You can't necessarily speak to them or address them or direct them in the same way that you would have grown up. So that's a whole new unique skill in of itself. We're recording this interview on the 18th of April 2024. So I guess then this film will be available, sort of round about the end of April, start of May 2024. Dean, where can people go on the web to find your work if they want to explore more of it?
They just head for Dean Midas Films, like you say, on YouTube, and deanmidasfilms.co.uk. They'll find all my films, everything we've done.
We hope you enjoyed watching today's interview. This video is part of the Filmmaker interview series from Pizzazz. At Pizzazz, we're building a production ecosystem that helps you to get things done. To try it for free, visit pizzazz.io today. Thanks for watching.